On August 7th, 2023, Lainey and I walked from Le Puy-en-Velay to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port on the Via Podiensis.
We had one travel day from Lyon to Le Puy-en-Velay, where we explored the city, and then we spent 28 days walking on the GR65 route. We didn't do any of the offshoots, so it was just 28 days to Saint-Jean-Pied-de-Port. From there, that's a different budget. We were on the Camino Frances all the way to Santiago, Compostela.
In this video, we're gonna talk about how much money we spent, what we spent it on, and a few ways that you can maybe save a few dollars or get a more accurate budget if you wanna walk the Chemin
du
Puy from the Puy, the Le Puy Camino. I'm Sean.
And I'm Lainey, and this is Days We Spend.
This is Days We Spend Money. We spent 3,005 euros for the two of us to spend 28 days on trail with a day at the beginning. It was around 100 euros a day, right around 50 euros per person. If you only have 2 minutes to watch this video, we spent 50 euros per person and it took us about a month.
I don't think the prices change that much every year, but they do increase. I was checking some of the prices of the gîtes that we stayed at online, and already some of them have added another euro or two to all their expenses. So then again, these numbers are all from this year in 2023. So if you want to adjust for inflation, maybe add a couple euros to the total expense.
And we're gonna do this all in euros. We can convert it to dollars, but again, it fluctuates so much that it's better to just think in euros if you're making your budget. So we broke our expenses down into, it looks like 10 categories. The quick list is gîtes, which is the accommodation, dining, groceries, alcohol, coffee, health, junk food, fun, stuff, fees, and gifts. And just straight up, 75% of our expenses came from those first two categories, gîtes and dining. So our first and most expensive category was accommodation. We spent 1,254 euros on our gîtes and Accommodation and parochials. That was for 29 nights of accommodation. So it works out to about 43 euros per day for both of us.
Gîtes are the French equivalent of the Spanish albergues, except there's fewer people staying in them, and you're almost always going to be getting a single bed instead of a bunk bed. Not always, but most likely, which is partially why they're more expensive. So our cheapest gîte was like 15 euros, and our most expensive one was like where we had a private room, but a shared bathroom, and that was like
25 or 30.
5 or 30.
Per person, we're saying.
Yeah, and in this category though, we're also counting, we had 2 nights that we just stayed at a booking.com apartment that we shared with our friends. And we think we had one other night that we were in more of a hotel-like place where we had a private bathroom attached.
But they were roughly the same price as a gîte equivalent. So we just kind of bundled them together.
You're going to get more for your money for a gîte than you will for an albergue. So even though the price looks a little like sticker shock, it is a nicer experience. The only way to save money in that category would be if you wanted to tent camp, because it's really popular to camp in France.
And that's not what we do. If you want to tent camp, have a good time, probably watch another video. The reason that the gîtes are also an interesting difference from the albergues is that most, if not all, gîtes have an option or outright just include a meal, dinner, oftentimes dinner and breakfast, in what's called the demi-pension price. We, a lot of times, would just pay a flat fee for our accommodation and dining. And then we looked it up afterwards to kind of see what it would have been just for the bed and what would have been for the dining. So our dining number is 1,003 euros for, again, 29 days. So it's roughly 35 euros for both of us every day. I think 99% of the time we got the demi-pension.
So the places that had demi-pension in those dining categories, oftentimes if you broke up the price, it was between 5 and 7 euros for breakfast. And for dinner, it was somewhere between 15 and 18 euros. And that's like our average price. Some of them were outliers there. Yeah. If you compare the price of dinner at a restaurant out, the dinners at the gîtes are actually a fairly good price because you're getting 3 courses, sometimes 4 courses. You're almost always getting wine with your meal, and it's homemade, beautifully cooked food 95% of the time.
Yeah, we did get a lot of rice, and we talked to other pilgrims, and they got a lot of like traditional French cuisine, like aligot and all this stuff, and we're like, we didn't get aligot not even one time.
So you could eat out in restaurants, but again, it's just rural southern France. So sometimes this means you're in a town on a Sunday or a Monday, nothing's open, so you have to eat the gîte meal. Sometimes you're just there during the holiday and nothing is open, like literally everything's closed, so you gotta eat the gîte meal. And sometimes the towns, just the restaurants that are serving dinner, are also kind of expensive. Like we saw hamburgers on a menu in a town, a very small town, for 16 euros for just the hamburger, not even including the wine or the drink or anything you want. We kind of felt like the dinners were oftentimes worth it.
Big part of the experience, you meet other pilgrims, you talk to the owners, and also sometimes you're just really tired and you don't want to walk another 500 meters to go get food. You could probably shave 5 to 10 euros of your per day off by like going out and just having one thing and a wine, but you're only saving a few euros a day and you might end up spending more. So I will say breakfast, if you're a very, very early hiker, it's a good idea because nothing's going to really be open. So fuel up with a coffee and a toast.
Or if it's a Sunday or a Monday when nothing's open.
I personally found the breakfast to be a little bit like underwhelming because it was usually just one small cup of coffee or like a weird bowl and like toast for 6 or 7 euros. To me, that's not great.
So the thing though, some of these places are giving you homemade jams and like
some of them,
and really nice butter. Some of them homemade their bread. So some of the breakfasts were like, wow, this is great. And I'm a breakfast person. I like to wake up and eat something before I hike. Sean does not, and neither do our friends. So like Sean and our friends did not want to eat breakfast when they woke up before they walked. So it's really about what do you feel for breakfast? And if you don't want the breakfast and you don't want to spend the money on that, you have to tell the gîte owner when you're making your reservation, you don't want breakfast.
Yeah, petit déjeuner.
Otherwise, they'll assume you have breakfast with them.
So our next category, we only spent 220 euros on groceries. And that includes basically anything we bought to cook for lunches, snacks, and Lainey's favorite meal of the day, the picnic.
Picnic. When you get some nice fine French cheese and you put it on your baguette and you get a really juicy tomato and you just...
Magical. That was a good way to save money. We didn't dine out for lunch very often. It was almost always just a sandwich in a field, or we would buy something quickly from a boulangerie.
Yeah, you go to an épicerie, which is like a small grocery store, and you pick up some ingredients and you eat it right there. Sometimes they have some pre-made quiches or something. Because the 2 or 3 times we ate out lunch, we were like, whoa, that's expensive.
My one biggest regret from the Via Podiensis is that I did not eat at enough boulangeries.
Not enough pastries.
I should have eaten at 3 boulangeries every single day.
We needed more pastries that were like the size of our face.
Pastries, as I like to call them.
Every day.
From there, the rest of our categories combined weren't even as much as like dining. So we spent 189 euros on alcohol. Again, that's anything that didn't include with dinner. So if we got beers out with friends or if we got a glass of wine during the day. Coffee, we spent 100 euros. Again, these are combined numbers. So 50 and 50. That's like 2 coffees a day. For health, we spent 73 euros. What was that like?
Oh, I got a massage. That's included in there. And I bought a lot of rehydration salts at the pharmacies because we had a heat wave and I was just sweating through everything. And France doesn't have like Gatorade it's not easy to find Gatorade.
So make sure you have a little budget for buying some things along the way. Maybe that's ibuprofen. Maybe that's, bandages. You're going to spend some money on health. Junk food, we could have easily included that in groceries or something, but if we just bought a bunch of candy or something, I kept that separate. Fun was any entrance fees for we went to the museum of the Bête du Gévaudan. Or if we paid to go to a cathedral, I considered that extra. It's like a fun thing. So for stuff, we spent 35 euros. Almost all of that was to buy an Opinel knife, like a corkscrew, so that we could open wines and cut meats and cheeses.
It was beautiful. It was the Opinel 10. And then we found out that when we went home in Spain, that you can't take a knife with over 6 centimeter blade. And that one was like 7.
Well, because of course you can't. It's a big knife. I'm not mad that they took it away at security. Way to go, security. But you might need to replace a ripped pair of pants or a shirt, or your socks might wear out. So budget a little bit for that. So the last 2 categories, we spent 10 euros on fees, which was 5 euros each to get our pilgrim passport in Le Puy. And then we bought gifts. We only spent 7 euros on gifts because we don't like our friends very much. A postcard. I think it was to send a postcard. So that's a grand total of 3,005 euros, roughly 103 euros per day, which is about 51 euros per person. I feel like that number is lower than it could have been, but a little higher than I wanted it to be.
We were expecting to spend more money in France than we would on a Camino in Spain, just because we knew that the prices of things were higher in France.
Like dinner was way higher.
Yeah, but it's definitely a lot higher than we were initially thinking it would be.
We walked across a beautiful part of Europe, eating out every day, getting groceries, having wine. We didn't really scrimp.
No.
If we really tried communal gîtes versus the nicer gîtes, like we could have easily made that number probably like 35 or 40 euros per day. Lower than that, I think would be really tough. You'd have to be backpack tent camping to be under 30. It's an extra 10 or 20 euros a day, which for us was worth it. For you, if that's too much, then there are ways to trim it down.
Yeah, we made the choice to stay more at the gîtes that offered food rather than the handful of gîtes that had kitchens. There's not that many that do that, so that you can cook. And we wanted to eat the French food. That's why we're in France.
Again, my only regret was I didn't have enough French food at the boulangeries, and we had rice too many times for gîte dinners. 3,000 sounds like so much money, but it was 2 people for almost a month in the high season in France. Again, this was August, and we got to Saint-Jean in early September. So this is like peak season, peak rates for the gîtes, peak tourist season for the restaurants. I think it was super worth it.
Yeah, it was a great time. If you're thinking of hiking the Chemin du Puy or the Via Podiensis, go for it. If you have any questions or comments, or you also walk this and have suggestions for future pilgrims, please put that in the comments below. We can't wait to return and finish some of the offshoot routes that exist in that area. It was lovely. I'm Lainey.
I'm Sean, and that's how much money we spent.